Mr. Brooks, there's something I need to tell you, my secretary said, not knowing she was speaking to her own ex-husband. As Selena Kennedy stood in my corner office, fidgeting with her wedding ring, she had no idea that the powerful CEO she'd been working for was Harrison Brooks, the same man she'd betrayed 5 years ago. "I'm having an affair with my husband's business partner," she confessed, seeking advice from her boss. "My husband is just a struggling accountant, but this other man, he's going to make me rich. I'm planning to divorce my husband and take everything he has." My blood ran cold as I listened to her describe her plan to destroy Harrison, not realizing she was talking to me. In her timeline, I was still that naive accountant she'd married. But she had no idea that her boss, the millionaire CEO of Brooks' financial empire, was the very same man whose life she'd planned to ruin. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The bankruptcy papers felt like ice in my trembling hands as I sat in the abandoned office that used to be Brooks and Stone Accounting. Everything I'd built over 10 years was gone. Every client, every dollar, every dream I'd shared with my wife Selena. "Harrison, we need to talk." Selena's voice echoed through the empty space as she walked in, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Even in my darkest moment, she looked radiant in her designer dress, a dress I couldn't afford to buy her anymore. I looked up from the papers, seeing my wife of 5 years for what I thought was the last time. We'd started this accounting firm together in downtown Millfield Heights, and now Tristan Sterling, my business partner and best friend since college, had somehow managed to steal everything from under me. "The lawyers finalized everything today," I said quietly, my voice hoarse from crying. "Tristan gets the business, the client list, even our house." Apparently he had legal documents showing he was the majority owner all along. "I don't understand how this happened, Selena. Those weren't the papers I signed." Selena sat down across from me, but instead of the comfort I expected, her expression was cold, almost amused. "Harrison, there's something you need to know." My heart was already broken, but something in her tone made it shatter completely. "I've been having an affair with Tristan for 2 years, she said, her words cutting through me like glass. "Everything that happened to you, the forged documents, the client stealing, the bankruptcy, we planned it all." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I stared at my wife, the woman I'd loved since we met at Westbridge University, the woman I'd given everything to. "What?" I whispered, barely able to form the word. Selena's mask finally dropped completely, and I saw the cruel stranger she'd been hiding beneath the surface. "Did you really think someone like me would stay with a pathetic accountant forever? Tristan has vision, ambition, money. You were content filing tax returns for small businesses in this dead-end town." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights of Millfield Heights. "Do you want to know the best part, Harry? While you were working late all those nights, thinking you were building our future, I was in Tristan's penthouse. Every business dinner you sent me to with him, every client meeting that ran late, I was betraying you. I felt physically sick. Selena, I loved you. I gave you everything I had." "Everything you had wasn't enough," she snapped, turning back to face me. "Tristan showed me what real success looks like. Private jets, luxury cars, mansions in Ocean View Hills. You offered me a modest house in the suburbs, and a vacation once a year to the same boring resort." The cruelty in her voice was devastating, but she wasn't finished destroying me. "Oh, and Harrison, remember when you had that heart attack last year, and I was so supportive during your recovery?" She smiled wickedly. "I was hoping you'd die. It would have made this whole thing so much easier. Tristan and I could have inherited the business without all this legal paperwork." I felt my chest tighten again, the familiar pain from my cardiac condition flaring up under the stress. You wanted me dead. I wanted you gone," she corrected. "Dead, divorced, bankrupt. I didn't really care which. But this way worked out perfectly. You lose everything, and I get to start fresh with a real man." As if summoned by her words, Tristan Sterling walked through the door. My former best friend looked exactly like what he'd always been, tall, confident, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary. He'd always been the charismatic one in college, the one who attracted attention while I did the actual work. "Hey buddy," Tristan said with a smirk that made me want to punch him. "Sorry about the business. Nothing personal, just business, you know." "Nothing personal." I stood up, rage giving me strength. "You stole my wife, my company, my entire life." Tristan laughed, wrapping his arm around Selena's waist. I didn't steal anything, Harrison. Selena chose the better man, and your clients chose the better firm. Face it, you were always meant to be someone's employee, not a business owner. Selena leaned into Tristan's embrace, and the sight of them together made my heart condition flare up again. Sharp pain shot through my chest, and I gripped the desk for support. Look at him, Selena said with disgust. He can't even handle a little stress without his heart giving out. How pathetic. Actually, that reminds me. Tristan pulled out a folder from his briefcase. Harrison, I have a generous offer for you. Now that I own Brooks & Stone, well, it's just Sterling and Associates now. I need experienced accountants. I'm willing to hire you as a junior associate. $50,000 a year, no benefits. But hey, it's better than unemployment. The humiliation was complete. They wanted me to work for the man who'd stolen my wife and my business. Think about it, Selena added. You could work for your ex-wife's new husband. I might even let you do my taxes. She laughed at her own cruelty. I looked around the empty office one last time, at the framed photos of happier times, at the awards we'd won, at the dreams that were now just dust. My chest pain was getting worse, and I could feel my heart struggling under the emotional weight. I'll never work for you, I managed to say through gritted teeth. I'll start over somewhere else. I'll build something bigger and better than anything you can imagine. Tristan and Selena exchanged amused glances. With what? Tristan asked. You have no money, no clients, no reputation. She's gonna trust the accountant, who lost his own business to his partner. Face reality, Harrison, Selena said, checking her expensive watch, a gift from Tristan. No doubt. You're a 40-year-old has been with a heart condition and no prospects. This is as good as your life is going to get. As they walked toward the door, Selena paused, and looked back at me with cold finality. Oh, and Harrison, I never loved you. Not really, you were just convenient. A safe choice while I figured out what I really wanted. And what I really wanted was never you. The door slammed behind them, leaving me alone in the ruins of my life. The chest pain was becoming unbearable now, radiating down my left arm. I fumbled for my phone to call for help, but my vision was blurring. As I collapsed to the floor of my former office, gasping for breath, I could only think about how completely I'd been fooled. 10 years of marriage, 5 years of business partnership, and it had all been an elaborate lie. I'd trusted the wrong people, loved the wrong woman, and made every possible mistake. The last thing I remembered before the darkness took me was the sound of sirens in the distance, and a paramedic saying, "We're losing him. His heart can't take much more of this." But as my consciousness faded, I felt something strange. Not peace, but a burning desire for justice. If I survived this, if I got another chance, I would make them pay for what they'd done to me. I would make them all pay. The heart monitor's steady beeping filled my ears as consciousness slowly returned. But something was wrong. The sound was too clear, too strong. I'd been dying, hadn't I? The doctors said my heart was failing, that the stress-induced cardiac event was too severe. I opened my eyes expecting to see the harsh fluorescent lights of Millfield General Hospital. But instead, I was staring at a familiar ceiling, the ceiling of my old apartment on Brookhaven Street, the place Selena and I had lived when we were newlyweds. What the hell? I sat up quickly, my heart racing, but feeling stronger than it had in years. The chest pain was gone. The crushing weight of betrayal was still there, but different somehow, like a memory, rather than a fresh wound. I looked around the small bedroom, taking in details that shouldn't exist anymore. The blue walls Selena had insisted on painting, the cheap furniture we'd bought when we couldn't afford anything better, the wedding photo on the nightstand showing two young hopeful people who had no idea what was coming. My hands went instinctively to my chest, but instead of the flabby, out-of-shape body of a 40-year-old man destroyed by stress, I felt the firm muscles I'd had in my early 30s. I rushed to the mirror and stared in shock at my reflection. I looked exactly like I had 8 years ago. This is impossible, I whispered. But the evidence was undeniable. Somehow, someway, I was back in 2015, back in our first apartment, back when I still believed Selena loved me, and Tristan was my loyal friend. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The bedside clock read 7:30 a.m., March 15th, 2015. I knew this date. This was the morning Tristan had called with the idea to expand our small accounting practice. the conversation that would eventually lead to our partnership agreement. In my original timeline, I'd been so excited about the opportunity that I'd rushed into the legal documents without reading them carefully. "Harrison, are you awake?" Selena's voice called from the kitchen, and my blood ran cold. That sweet, caring tone I now knew was completely fake. But she didn't know that I knew. "Coming," I called back, my mind racing. This was real. Somehow, impossibly, I'd been given a second chance. But this time, I had 8 years of knowledge about what was coming. I walked into our small kitchen and saw Selena making coffee, wearing the silk robe I'd bought her for our anniversary. She looked exactly as beautiful as I remembered, but now I could see what I'd missed before. The slight calculation in her eyes, the way she was already checking her phone, probably texting Tristan. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said, kissing my cheek. The gesture that once would have filled me with happiness now made my skin crawl. "Tristan called. He wants to meet with you today about some business opportunity." He sounded really excited. In my original timeline, I'd been thrilled by her encouragement. Now I could hear the subtle manipulation. She was already pushing me toward the trap. "Did he say what kind of opportunity?" I asked, playing along. "Something about expanding the firm, bringing in bigger clients. He thinks you two could really build something special together." Selena poured my coffee exactly how I liked it, the perfect wife act she'd performed so well for years. I watched her carefully as she moved around the kitchen. How had I missed the signs? The way she always seemed to know Tristan's schedule better than mine, how she'd push for business dinners with him, how she'd always take his side in any disagreement between us. "Selena," I said carefully, "what do you think about Tristan?" She paused, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker across her face before the mask returned. "What do you mean? Do you think he's trustworthy? As a business partner?" "Of course," she said quickly. "He's your best friend, Harrison. You've known him since college. And he's so successful. Look at how well he's doing with his consulting work. You could learn a lot from him." There it was, the subtle put-down wrapped in encouragement. In my original timeline, I'd heard it as supportive. Now I recognized it as part of her long-term manipulation. My phone rang, and Tristan's name appeared on the screen. In my past life, I'd answered eagerly. This time, I let it ring. "Aren't you going to answer that?" Selena asked, a note of urgency in her voice. "I'll call him back," I said, watching her reaction. She was definitely agitated by my hesitation. "Harrison, this could be important for your career. You know how Tristan is. He doesn't like to be kept waiting." Interesting. She was more concerned about Tristan's feelings than mine. How had I been so blind? I picked up the phone and called Tristan back, putting it on speaker so I could watch Selena's face. "Harrison, buddy, I have the most incredible opportunity." Tristan's voice filled the kitchen, and I saw Selena's expression brighten immediately. "I've been thinking about what we discussed, expanding your little accounting practice into something bigger. I have some investors who might be interested." In my original timeline, those investors had been fictional, just another part of the elaborate scheme, to get me to sign over control of my business. "What kind of expansion are you thinking?" I asked. "Big corporate accounts, maybe some international clients. But we'd need to restructure everything. New partnership agreements, new business model. I could handle the business development side, while you focus on the accounting. What do you say we meet today at Pinnacle Plaza? I'll show you some projections." Selena was nodding enthusiastically, mouthing, "Say yes" at me. In my past life, her encouragement had been the final push I needed to agree. Now it was confirmation of her involvement in the scheme. "Let me think about it, Tristan. I'll call you back this afternoon." There was a pause, and I could hear the frustration in his voice. "Think about it, Harrison. Opportunities like this don't wait around. My investors are only in town for a few days." I said I'll call you back. I hung up, and Selena stared at me in shock. "Harrison, what's gotten into you? This is exactly what you've been wanting. A chance to grow the business, make more money. Why are you hesitating?" "Maybe because I've learned not to rush into things," I said, studying her face. "Maybe I've learned that when something sounds too good to be true, it usually is." Selena looked confused, almost panicked. "But this is Tristan. He's trying to help you. Is he? Or is he trying to help himself?" For just a moment, Selena's mask slipped completely, and I saw raw fear in her eyes. Then she recovered, forcing a laugh. "You're being paranoid, Harrison. Success requires taking risks. But I wasn't the same man who'd been manipulated before. This time, I had knowledge, experience, and most importantly, I had seen exactly what these two were capable of. You know what, Selena? You're right about one thing. I do need to take risks. But maybe not the ones you think. I walked to my laptop and opened it, beginning to research something I should have done 8 years ago. Background checks on business partners, asset protection strategies, and most importantly, divorce lawyers in Millfield Heights. If they wanted to play games, I would play. But this time, I would be the one writing the rules. This time, I would be the one who won. Over the next few weeks I watched my wife and best friend with the eyes of someone who already knew their true nature. It was like watching a movie I'd seen before, except now I could see all the plot twists coming. Every morning Selena would ask about my business opportunity with Tristan. Every day, I'd give her vague answers while I quietly began building something they couldn't steal from me. The most shocking realization was how long the manipulation had been going on. Armed with my future knowledge, I started recognizing patterns I'd completely missed the first time around. There was the time Selena accidentally mentioned that Tristan had complimented her dress, followed by her suggestion that maybe I should dress more professionally like he did. I now understood this was her way of creating subtle comparisons, making me feel inadequate while elevating him in my mind. There were the business dinners, where Selena would insist on coming along, then spend the entire evening laughing at Tristan's jokes while barely acknowledging mine. In my original timeline, I'd thought she was just being social. Now I could see she was building their connection right in front of me. Most telling were the small betrayals of trust. When I'd confided in Selena about my concerns regarding certain clients, that information would mysteriously make its way to Tristan, who'd then use it to position himself as the solution to problems I didn't even know I had. But the most painful realization was how little my wife actually knew about me. During dinner one evening, as she told me about her day working at the boutique marketing firm downtown, I decided to test something. Selena, what's my biggest dream for the business? I asked. She looked up from her phone, clearly not having been listening to me talk about my day. What? My biggest goal? What do you think I really want to achieve with the accounting firm? She waved her hand dismissively. Oh, you know, the usual. Make more money, get bigger clients. Same thing every business owner wants. But that wasn't what I'd told her countless times. My real dream had been to create a firm that specialized in helping small businesses and startups succeed. To be the kind of accountant who helped people build their dreams rather than just filing their taxes. I'd shared this vision with her dozens of times, but she'd never been listening. What about you? I asked. What's your biggest career goal? Her face lit up immediately. I want to start my own luxury consulting business, help wealthy clients with lifestyle management, event planning, that kind of thing. I've always been drawn to that world. The glamour, the connections, the prestige. This was new information. In our 5 years of marriage, she'd never mentioned this dream to me, but I was willing to bet she'd shared it with Tristan. That sounds expensive to start up, I said carefully. Well, yes, but with the right investor or partner. She trailed off, and I saw her catch herself. I mean, it's just a dream for now. But I knew it wasn't just a dream, it was part of the plan. Once they'd stolen my business and divorced me, she'd use the money to start her luxury lifestyle company, with Tristan's financial backing. The next day, I did something I'd never done in my original timeline. I hired a private investigator. Brooks, Detective Nova Sterling said as she sat in my office. Investigating your own wife and business partner is a serious step. Are you sure you want to go down this road? I'm sure, I said, handing her a substantial retainer check. I need to know exactly what they're planning. What Nova discovered over the next month was even worse than I'd remembered. Not only were Tristan and Selena having an affair, but they'd been planning their betrayal for over a year. The private investigator provided me with photos, recorded conversations, and financial documents that painted a clear picture of their scheme. They hadn't just been stealing my wife and business, they'd been systematically destroying my professional reputation, spreading rumors to clients about my instability and personal problems. Several clients had already been approached by Tristan, with offers to transfer their accounts to his more reliable firm. But the most damaging evidence was a recorded conversation between them at the Ocean View Hills Country Club, where Tristan was a member. Harrison's such a pushover, Tristan's voice was clear on the recording. He'll sign whatever I put in front of him as long as I make it sound like an opportunity. He trusts you completely, Selena replied, and I could hear the amusement in her voice. Sometimes I almost feel bad for him. Almost. Don't feel bad for him. Feel bad for yourself having to pretend to love him for another few months, Tristan said. But once we have control of his business and assets, you can file for divorce and take half of everything. Then we'll combine his client list with my consulting business, and we'll have the perfect luxury lifestyle you've always wanted. What about his heart condition? Selena asked. The stress might actually kill him. Even better, Tristan laughed. Saves us the hassle of a messy divorce. Listening to my wife casually discuss my potential death was devastating, but this time I was prepared for their cruelty. More importantly, I now had recorded evidence of their fraud conspiracy. While they'd been planning my destruction, I'd been building my salvation. Using my knowledge of future market trends and business opportunities, I'd quietly started making investments and connections they knew nothing about. I'd reached out to Alexander Patel, a venture capitalist I remembered reading about in business magazines during my recovery. In my original timeline, Alexander had built a tech empire by investing in companies that leveraged accounting software and financial services. This time I got to him first. Mr. Brooks, Alexander said over dinner at an upscale restaurant in downtown Millfield Heights. Your proposal for automated small business financial services is exactly what the market needs. The subscription model, the AI integration, this could be worth hundreds of millions. I'm glad you think so, I replied. But I need to move quickly. I have some competitive concerns. Alexander nodded knowingly. I've done my research on your current situation. Tristan Sterling has been making inquiries about acquiring small accounting firms. He seems particularly interested in yours. What would it take to get this new venture funded and operational within 6 months? I asked. For the right founder with the right vision, we could have you incorporated, funded, and hiring within 60 days. But you'd need to be all in, Harrison. No divided loyalties, no other partnerships. This was the moment of truth. In my original timeline, I'd been too afraid to take big risks, too comfortable with the small, steady growth of my traditional accounting practice. That caution had made me vulnerable to Tristan's manipulation. I'm in, I said, extending my hand to shake on the deal that would change everything. As I walked out of that restaurant, I felt something I hadn't experienced in either of my lifetimes. Not the false confidence of someone who'd been lucky, but the deep, unshakable confidence of someone who'd already seen the worst life could offer and survived it. Selena and Tristan thought they were playing a game with an amateur. They had no idea they were now facing someone who'd already seen every move they were planning to make. The hunter had become the hunted, and they didn't even know the game had begun. 3 months into my second chance at life, I made the decision that would change everything. Instead of falling into Tristan's trap, I chose to walk away from everything familiar and build something entirely new. Harrison, we need to talk. Selena cornered me in our kitchen one morning. Her usual sweet demeanor replaced with barely contained frustration. Tristan says you've been avoiding his calls for weeks. He's starting to take it personally. Maybe because I am avoiding his calls, I said calmly, not looking up from my laptop where I was reviewing contracts for my new venture. Selena's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the anger underneath. What's gotten into you lately? You're acting like a completely different person. This isn't like you, Harrison. She was right. This wasn't like the old me. The old Harrison would have felt guilty, would have apologized, would have called Tristan immediately to smooth things over. But I wasn't that man anymore. People change, Selena. Maybe I'm finally growing a backbone. A backbone? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Since when do you turn down opportunities to advance your career? Tristan is offering you everything you've ever wanted. No, I said, finally looking up at her. Tristan is offering me everything you've ever wanted. There's a difference. Her face went pale. In our original timeline, I'd never challenged her like this, never questioned whose dreams we were actually pursuing. I don't know what you mean, she stammered. Don't you? All those conversations about expanding the business, getting bigger clients, making more money, those weren't my words, Selena. Those were yours. You put those ideas in my head because they served your purposes. Before she could respond, my phone rang. Tristan's name flashed on the screen, and Selena immediately perked up. Answer it, please, Harrison. Just hear him out. I declined the call,
and turned back to my laptop. I'm busy. Busy with what? She moved around to look at my screen, but I closed the laptop before she could see anything. What are you working on that's more important than your future? My actual future. Not the one you and Tristan have planned for me. This time, her shock was genuine. In our original relationship, I'd never kept anything from her, never had secrets. But this time, I understood that information was power, and I wasn't about to hand over my power to someone who'd already proven she'd use it against me. Over the following weeks, both Selena and Tristan escalated their efforts to bring me back under their control. Tristan showed up at my office unannounced, bringing expensive bottles of wine and talking about the good old days in college. When that didn't work, he tried guilt, claiming I was throwing away our friendship over paranoid business concerns. "You're making a huge mistake, Harrison," he said, during one particularly tense confrontation. "I'm trying to help you build something bigger than you could ever create on your own. But if you keep rejecting my help, don't come crawling back when your little accounting practice fails." "I'll take that risk," I replied, and I saw genuine confusion in his eyes. He'd never encountered a version of me that couldn't be intimidated or manipulated. Meanwhile, Selena's approach became more desperate. She'd suddenly developed an interest in my work, asking detailed questions about my clients and business plans. When I remained vague, she'd pout and accuse me of not trusting her. "We're supposed to be a team, Harrison," she said one evening, tears in her eyes that I now knew were completely fake. "Married couples don't keep secrets from each other." "You're absolutely right," I said, my voice steady. "Married couples shouldn't keep secrets. So tell me, Selena, is there anything you've been keeping from me?" She froze, clearly not expecting the question to be turned back on her. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said. Are you keeping any secrets from me?" She forced a laugh, but I could see the panic in her eyes. "Of course not. Don't be ridiculous." But I knew she was lying, just as I knew that every tear, every plea, every moment of seeming vulnerability was calculated manipulation, designed to keep me under her control. The final break came when Alexander Patel's investment went through, and I officially incorporated Pinnacle Financial Solutions. Within days of the news becoming public, both Selena and Tristan showed up at my office together, something that should have been a red flag even to my original naive self. "Congratulations, buddy," Tristan said, with forced enthusiasm. "I heard about your new venture. Very impressive. Maybe we should talk about how I could get involved." "Maybe we shouldn't," I replied. For the first time since I'd known him, Tristan looked genuinely angry. "You're making enemies, Harrison. In this business, you need allies." "You're right," I said, standing up from my desk. "I do need allies, which is exactly why I'm choosing them more carefully this time." The look that passed between Selena and Tristan in that moment confirmed everything the private investigator had discovered. They weren't just surprised by my independence, they were terrified by it. Their carefully laid plans were crumbling, and for the first time in either of my lifetimes, I held all the cards. 18 months after walking away from Selena and Tristan's trap, Pinnacle Financial Solutions had grown beyond my wildest dreams from either lifetime. What started as a small automated accounting service had exploded into a comprehensive financial technology platform, serving thousands of small businesses across 3 states. "Mr. Brooks, we have Goldman Sachs on line 3, my assistant Madison Baker announced through the intercom of my corner office in the newly constructed Pinnacle Tower, in downtown Millfield Heights. "They want to discuss acquisition options."
"Tell them I'm not interested in selling," I replied, not looking up from the quarterly reports spread across my mahogany desk. "But I might be interested in buying some of their smaller divisions." The transformation had been extraordinary. Using my knowledge of future market trends and business needs, I'd positioned Pinnacle Financial as the go-to solution for everything small businesses needed: automated bookkeeping, tax preparation, payroll management, and financial planning. We'd gone from 3 employees to over 200 in less than 2 years. More importantly, I'd built a company culture based on loyalty and genuine respect, everything my original partnership with Tristan had lacked. Employees stayed because they felt valued, not because they were trapped. Partners joined because they saw mutual benefit, not because they were being manipulated. "Sir, there's something else," Madison continued. "We just received another inquiry from Sterling and Associates. That's the 5th one this month. They seem very interested in some kind of partnership or merger discussion. I smiled grimly. Tristan was getting desperate. Without me to steal from, his elaborate consulting business had proven to be nothing more than smoke and mirrors. According to my sources, he'd lost most of his clients within 6 months of my refusal to partner with him. Schedule a meeting, I said. It's time I heard what Mr. Sterling has to offer. Yes, sir, and don't forget you have dinner with the mayor tonight. She wants to discuss the economic development initiative. The mayor, another connection I'd leveraged using my future knowledge. In my original timeline, I'd been too small and insignificant to even dream of dining with political leaders. Now they sought me out. That evening, as I was preparing for dinner, my phone rang. It was Detective Nova Sterling, with her monthly update. Mr. Brooks, I thought you should know. The situation with your ex-wife has deteriorated significantly. Ex-wife, I asked, though I already knew what she meant. The divorce papers were filed last week. Mrs. Kennedy, or rather, Mrs. Brooks, has moved out of your old apartment and in with Mr. Sterling. But their financial situation isn't what she expected. Nova's investigation had revealed the whole sordid story. Without my business to steal, Tristan's promised wealth had evaporated. He'd been living on credit and promises, maintaining an expensive lifestyle he couldn't actually afford. When I'd refused to be their victim, their entire house of cards had collapsed. Sterling lost the lease on his Ocean View Hills penthouse 3 months ago, Nova continued. They're now living in a modest apartment in the Riverside district. Mrs. Brooks has been forced to take a job at Hartwell Communications as a marketing assistant. Quite a step down from the luxury lifestyle she was promised. The irony was perfect. While I'd built an empire, they'd destroyed themselves chasing fantasies of wealth that depended entirely on betraying me. There's more, Nova said. Sterling's consulting business is essentially bankrupt. He's been desperately reaching out to former clients, but word has gotten around about his questionable business practices. Most of the professional community in Millfield Heights won't work with him anymore. I felt a satisfaction I'd never experienced in my original lifetime. Not the bitter taste of revenge, but the clean satisfaction of justice served by natural consequences. Thank you for the update, Nova. I think we can conclude this investigation now. Are you sure? They might try something desperate. Let them try, I said, looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse office at the city sprawling below me. I'm no longer the man they thought they could destroy. After hanging up, I allowed myself a moment to appreciate how completely everything had changed. In my original timeline, I'd been so focused on their betrayal that I'd never realized the real opportunity their absence created. Without toxic people draining my energy and sabotaging my efforts, I'd been free to become the person I was truly meant to be. My phone buzzed with a text from Alexander Patel. Forbes wants to do a cover story on Pinnacle's success. You interested in being Entrepreneur of the Year? I smiled and typed back. Schedule it. I have quite a story to tell. As I headed out to dinner with the mayor, I couldn't help but think about how different this timeline felt from my original life. Instead of being crushed by betrayal, I'd been freed by truth. Instead of being diminished by their cruelty, I'd been empowered by their absence. The best revenge, I'd learned, wasn't destroying your enemies. It was becoming so successful that their betrayal became irrelevant. 5 years had passed since I'd built Pinnacle Financial Solutions into a multi-billion-dollar empire. The company now occupied 3 buildings in downtown Millfield Heights, employed over 1,000 people, and had been featured on the cover of Fortune magazine twice. I'd been named CEO of the Year by Business Weekly, spoken at Harvard Business School, and had more wealth than I'd ever dreamed possible in either of my lifetimes. But nothing could have prepared me for the moment when my head of HR, Everly Hayes, walked into my corner office with a familiar resume. Mr. Brooks, I have the perfect candidate for your new executive secretary position, she said, placing the document on my desk. Selena Kennedy. She has 5 years of experience in administrative support, excellent references, and she interviewed beautifully. Very professional, very eager to work for a successful company like ours. I stared at the resume, my heart racing as I saw the woman who'd once planned to destroy my life now desperately seeking employment from me. According to her work history, she'd bounced between several low-level administrative positions over the past few years, never lasting more than 18 months at any company. What happened to her previous positions? I asked, though I suspected I already knew. She mentioned some personal challenges, a difficult divorce, financial pressures. You know how it is, life can be tough. But she seems very motivated to start fresh with a stable company. The irony was breathtaking. Selena Kennedy, who'd once thought she was too good for a pathetic accountant, was now begging for a job working directly for that same man, without having any idea who he really was. Schedule an interview, I said. I'd like to meet her personally. 3 days later, Selena Kennedy walked into my office wearing a conservative business suit that couldn't hide the fact that she looked older, more worn down than the vibrant woman who'd betrayed me years ago. Her once perfect hair showed signs of cheap salon work, and there were stress lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. More importantly, she looked right through me without a flicker of recognition. The confident, powerful CEO sitting behind the massive oak desk was so far removed from the struggling accountant she'd once known that her mind couldn't make the connection. "Miss Kennedy, please have a seat," I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. "I understand you're interested in the executive secretary position." "Yes, Mr. Brooks," she said eagerly, her voice carrying a note of desperation she was trying to hide. "I've researched your company extensively. Pinnacle Financial Solutions is exactly the kind of innovative, successful organization I want to be part of." I almost laughed. She'd researched the company, but had no idea she was staring at her ex-husband. "Tell me about yourself, Miss Kennedy. What drives you?" "I believe in supporting successful people," she said, clearly reciting a prepared answer. "I understand that behind every great leader is a strong support system. I want to be part of something bigger than myself." How perfectly she'd summarized her entire approach to life, always looking to attach herself to someone else's success rather than building her own. "What about your personal situation? Any commitments that might interfere with your work?" Her expression darkened slightly. "I'm recently divorced. My ex-husband was, well, let's just say he lacked ambition. I wasted too many years supporting someone who was content with mediocrity. I'm looking for a fresh start with people who understand what success really means." The audacity was stunning. She'd rewritten history in her mind, casting me as the failure, while portraying herself as the victim of my lack of ambition. "I see. And are you currently in a relationship?" She hesitated, then smiled in a way that reminded me of the manipulative woman I'd once been married to. "There is someone I've been seeing. A potential business partner, actually. Someone who could really help advance my career, if things work out." I knew exactly who she was talking about. My sources had told me that Selena had recently reconnected with Tristan, both of them struggling financially, and apparently planning some new scheme together. "That sounds promising," I said, neutrally. "What kind of business partnership?" Selena leaned forward slightly, clearly thinking she was building rapport with her potential boss. "Well, to be honest, Mr. Brooks, I'm married to a man who has some valuable assets, a small but profitable business. My friend thinks we could leverage those assets for a much larger venture. It would require some careful planning, some strategic moves, but the potential payoff could be enormous." My blood ran cold as I realized what she was describing. They were planning to run the same con on some other poor victim that they'd tried to run on me. "Mr. Brooks, there's something I need to tell you," she continued, her voice dropping to a confidential whisper. "I'm having an affair with my husband's business partner. My husband is just a struggling accountant, but this other man, he's going to make me rich. I'm planning to divorce my husband and take everything he has." I sat perfectly still, watching this woman describe her plan to destroy another man's life with the same casual cruelty she'd once shown me. "The beauty of it is," she continued, "my husband trusts his partner completely. He'll sign whatever we put in front of him, and when it's all over, I'll have the money and the successful partner I deserve." The silence stretched between us as I processed what I'd just heard. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about protecting her next victim. "Miss Kennedy," I said, finally, my voice carefully controlled, "before we continue this interview, I think there's something you should know." "What's that, Mr. Brooks?" I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a framed photo, one of the few items I'd kept from my original timeline. It showed a younger version of myself with Selena on our wedding day, both of us smiling and hopeful about the future. Selena's face went white as she stared at the photo, then looked up at me, recognition finally dawning in her eyes. "Hello, Selena," I said quietly. "It's been a long time."
Her mouth opened and closed several times before she managed to speak. Harrison? But how? You're supposed to be. Supposed to be what? Dead? Bankrupt? Broken? I stood up and walked around to the front of my desk. I'm sure that's what you and Tristan hoped for after you stole my life. Tears started streaming down her face, real ones this time, born of genuine terror rather than calculated manipulation. Harrison, please. I can explain. Explain what? How you're planning to run the same con on some other innocent man. How you've learned nothing from the consequences of your choices. She fell to her knees, grasping at my suit jacket. Please, Harrison. I'm sorry. I was young and stupid and greedy. I've paid for what I did. Look at me. Look at my life. I've lost everything. No, Selena. You didn't lose everything. You threw everything away. There's a difference. I gently but firmly removed her hands from my jacket and stepped back. Here's what's going to happen, I said, returning to my chair. You're going to leave this office, and you're never going to contact me again. You're going to stay away from whatever poor man you're planning to victimize with Tristan. And you're going to find an honest job and try to build an honest life. And if I don't, she whispered. I smiled, and for the first time in either of my lifetimes, it was the smile of a man who held all the power. If you don't, I'll make sure everyone in this city knows exactly what kind of person you really are. I have resources now, Selena. Resources you can't imagine. I could destroy what's left of your reputation with a single phone call. She stared at me with a mixture of fear and awe, finally understanding the magnitude of what she'd lost when she'd betrayed me. Why? She asked as she stood to leave. Why are you letting me go? I looked at her, this woman who'd once seemed so beautiful and important, who now appeared small and desperate, and felt nothing but pity. Because, Selena, the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's becoming so successful that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. You're irrelevant now. That's punishment enough. As she left my office for the last time, I realized my journey was finally complete. I'd been given a second chance, and I'd used it not just to avoid their trap, but to become the man I was always meant to be. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating your enemies, it's outgrowing them entirely. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.